the whole gaming culture.
Nice poster. Oh, what, like you a big fan of the Fett?
No. It's always more of a Star Wars guy.
Bitch, you better be joking.
The Book of Boba Fett is one of the most bizarre shows I've ever experienced. I can't even say that it's good or bad necessarily, it's just strange. I've been looking forward to this show ever since it was announced. Not only am I a huge Star Wars fan, but I've always loved this particular character. Not for like any deep or meaningful reason though, it really just boils down to the fact that he has a cool costume. But there was always this mystique about him. He felt like an old Western character brought into this sci-fi world. So going into this show, I tried not to have super high expectations. I really just wanted to see one of my favorite characters get a cool story and get to do some badass stuff. And I guess we kinda got that, but some of the choices that are made are just so odd, I can't help but let it bug me. So if you watched any of the trailers leading up to this show, or even if you just watched the end of the second season of Mando, you would most likely assume that this show is about Boba Fett becoming a crime lord on Tatooine. And, well, it's kind of about that, but it's also about a bunch of other shit. I do think one of the main reasons this show has me so disappointed is that I feel like the marketing just lied to me. I thought the whole show was going to be about this gangster shit, but it surprisingly gets very little screen time. Instead, for the first half of the show, they decide to focus on my favorite thing in television. Fucking flashbacks. At first I thought they were just going to give us a few flashbacks to sort of catch us up, but they very much overstay their welcome. The first 4 episodes of this show are made up of almost 70% flashbacks. That's just fucking insane. Every single time they give us a shot of this Bacta tank, we go into like a 20 to 30 minute flashback.
Wait, no, don't flashback!
And these flashbacks all take place after Boba gets out of the Sarlacc, but before he gets his armor, which to me seems like the least interesting part of Boba's story. And after episode 2, I was thinking, okay, if they're spending this much time on flashbacks, then it must be pretty important to the present day story, right? But spoiler alert, it really isn't. Like, this is what happens. Boba escapes the Sarlacc, he's rescued by the Tusken Raiders, who bring him into their tribe, but after he robs a train with them, they all get murdered. So then he finds Fennec Shand, they steal back the Slave One, blow up the Sarlacc, and then we're all caught up. See how I explained that in like 10 seconds? Well, in this show, it takes about 90 minutes. Like, I kind of already assume that Boba had some sort of the relationship with the Tuskens after he escaped, and I didn't really need to see him get his ship back, especially since he doesn't even use it for the remainder of the show. It's really frustrating, because all I wanted was for them to get through these flashbacks faster, since not a ton was happening in them, and all they do is prevent the present story from becoming interesting. Like, in episode 1, where Boba almost gets assassinated, and then we just cut to a flashback where he fights Goro from Mortal Kombat. And in the second episode, we get this reveal of these 2 Hutt characters and this big-ass Wookiee bounty hunter, and I'm like, oh shit, this is getting pretty cool. But then we stop it dead to go to the Bacta tanks and get another fucking flashback that lasts for like 45 minutes. I think that flashbacks can be a really good tool to flesh out a character or add extra context to certain situations in the story, but it needs to be used sparingly. Having it take up a majority of the runtime makes it sort of feel like they didn't really know what to do with the character or the story in general. But at the end of episode 4, a droid says, "Hey Boba, you're fully healed and we are not going to be doing any more flashbacks." And I was like, thank fucking God we can finally focus on all the shit that I'm actually interested in. But then the show makes the most insane choice possible. It decides to become a completely different show.
What?
Now don't get me wrong, I love The Mandalorian. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. But in episode 5, the show decided to literally change its main character. We switch to Mando's perspective and get this story about the Darksaber and him getting a new ship. And Boba Fett isn't even in the episode. What the fuck? Now at this point, I was pretty frustrated, but I thought, whatever, I guess it's just one episode. But then it just keeps going, because the 6th episode is once again almost entirely focused on Mando. Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. Boba is in this one scene here, and he just stands there and doesn't even have any lines. Are you fucking serious? Why are you doing my boy so dirty? And it doesn't stop there. This episode brings in Cobb Vanth, Ahsoka, Grogu, Luke Skywalker, and Cad Bane. Yeah, you did all that, but you forgot about the main character. And if this was just an episode of Mando, hell, even if you named the show something else or marketed it differently, I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. There are actually some really cool shit going on in these episodes, like Mando using the Darksaber and getting this Phantom Menace ship, and all the stuff with Luke and Cad Bane is amazing, but it just reminds me of how not amazing the rest of the show has been. Which brings me to my next issue, which is Boba Fett himself. Not to be a Star Wars gatekeeper or anything, but this does not feel like Boba Fett at all. And I know what people are gonna say. Oh, he wasn't cool before either. He got thrown in the Sarlacc pit by a blind guy. What an idiot. And yeah, that's fair, but hear me out. Let's not focus on Boba from the original trilogy. Hell, let's even ignore the prequels and the comics and the cartoons and just focus on the version of Boba Fett that we've gotten most recently. When he gets introduced in Mando, the first thing he says is, "Give me my armor or I'm gonna kill your baby." God, that's a fucking terrible impression. And then 30 seconds later, he does this. You see, in Mandalorian, he's actually pretty spot on for how I imagine the character. He's a badass with a code of honor, and he pretty much talks shit to everyone.
Careful, princess.
You are a clone. I've heard your voice thousands of times.
Mine might be the last one you hear.
Now let's compare that to how Boba acts in this show.
No one respects you.
Bitch, you better be joking.
Maybe this is a hot take, but I feel like Boba Fett should always be kind of an asshole. Think about it, he's always been on the side of the villains, whether it's in the originals, the prequels, hell, even in the cartoons. I don't know what the hell happened between these shows, because this does not feel like the same character at all. He's also extremely passive when it comes to the action. Most of his scenes in the present are just him walking around and talking to people. It's like any edge or personality that this character had previously is completely gone. Some of the lines they give this man are something else.
And your inventory is water. I grew up surrounded by water.
Okay.
And the only explanation for why he's acting differently is because of his time with the Sand People. He's a changed man now, he's different. But that doesn't make any sense, because he was talking shit and murdering people in Mando, and all of that takes place after these flashbacks occurred. What the fuck, John? Did you forget? Did you forget that you wrote that? So finally, I want to talk about the finale. After spending a majority of the show on flashbacks and The Mandalorian and NFT Luke Skywalker, it's finally time to pay off this gangster shit. And I didn't think this would be a controversial opinion, but I actually like this episode a lot. Don't get me wrong, there's still some problems with the writing and the editing, but that's been a problem with this show since episode 1, so I guess I'm a little bit desensitized to it by now. And sure, this episode does not fix the entire show for me by any means, but I'm just so happy that we got to see Boba Fett being Boba Fett in a Boba Fett show. Yes, this big action shootout finale is pretty predictable, but I'm not gonna lie, I was smiling and laughing the entire episode. Seeing Boba Fett and Mando fight together on screen is really cool, and I hope that we can get more of this in the future. I'm a simple man, and watching two cool bounty hunters kick ass together really tickles my fancy. I thought Boba Fett on a Rancor would be kinda dumb, but it surprisingly looks pretty good, and I thought all the fighting with these Skynet spider robots was a lot of fun. And it's not just Boba who gets to shine here either. I think the action is divided up pretty evenly between all of our characters. And if you're not familiar with some of Rodriguez's earlier movies, like Desperado, I can understand maybe not being a fan of the way that these shootouts look, but I like those movies, so I thought it was pretty cool. And I've seen a lot of people online complain about how this episode was just too rushed, but I guess that's what happens when you decide to take 2 episodes away from the main character. It's honestly hilarious seeing so many people just realizing this show is a fucking mess after this episode. But I've thought it was a mess since day 1, so I just turned my brain off and enjoyed the dumb action for what it was. And as usual, Star Wars fans have the dumbest complaints about everything. They think that this episode was bad because where were the cameos? I want to see some more cameos. All I give a shit about cameos. Honestly, the fact that Luke Skywalker or Han Solo or Han Solo's ex-girlfriend doesn't show up at the end of this, you earn points from me. And I also should probably address these cyberpunk mod cast of Euphoria looking ass characters. Like, I remember when they got introduced, somebody compared them to the Power Rangers, and I thought that was kind of funny. But then literally everyone on the internet made the exact same joke over and over and over again. Yeah, guys, it was funny the first time, but can we please shut the fuck up? I will admit, the execution on these characters is a bit off, but I think this is more of a result of budget limitations. I think they could have made something work, but I will admit, it is pretty goofy, but I think that people are way overreacting. And yes, this episode is also just an excuse to reunite Mando with Baby Yoda. I can definitely understand people being a little annoyed by this. I mean, I figured they would be reunited sooner than later, but I didn't think they'd do it before Season 3 even begins. And now the show is kind of required watching for Mandalorian fans, because if you don't watch it, I imagine Season 3 is going to be pretty confusing. So that's it. The Pikes are defeated, Cad Bane gets ganked, and Mos Espa is saved. Overall, I think this show definitely needed a few more drafts in the writing room, because it is a fucking all over the place. And if it weren't for the finale, I'd say that this show was a pretty big waste. But beggars can't be choosers, and I'm glad I at least got what I wanted at the end. Even if the rest of the show fucking sucks shit.
My backpacks got jets. Well, I'm Boba, the Fett. Well, I bounty hunt for Jabba Hutt to finance my vet. Well, I chill in deep space. A mask is over my face. Well, I deliver the prize, but I still narrow my eyes, cause my time I don't like to waste. Get down! I'm a question, rep inside Enigma. Get inside a slave one, find your home and signal. From Endor to Hoth, Ridley to Spock. I'll find what you want, but there's gonna be a cost. Say my name is Boba Fett. I know my shit is tight. Start acting right, yo, buzzing a carbonite. Got telescopic sight, flamethrowers on my wrist. You still don't get the gist. Spike pizza made a kick, targets made a hit. You think I give a shit? Your mama is a bitch. I see you in the Sarlacc pit. You just flip my switch. Integrity's been hit. You scratching on my itch. You know I shoot the gift. I got Babina Secatinas with a lick my lusty lips. So I'll let you get back inside your little spaceship. Give you a head start, cause I'm a sporting con. Consider the starting line a sneaky smile, hand side. Hope you have hyperdrive. Pray to stay alive. Don't try to slip me five, cause I never take a bribe. To the beat of a different drummer. Baddest bunny hunter. Let no man put us under or